Hello everyone, just trying to get my camera situated here and then we will get started. I'll give a minute or two for people to jump on. I do not know what is going on with my mount here. It's not wanting to hold my phone up. I think that's as good as it's gonna get. Give it just another minute here and we'll get going. Get some last minute setting up here of my workspace. See if anybody's gonna jump on. Good morning. Hello to you all, my crafty friends. What is going on this Wednesday morning? It is a beautiful day here in Tennessee. Make sure you jump on, leave a little comment or a like. Let me know you're watching. We are going to do a cute, fun little project this morning that is super simple. We're actually going to be making a set of 3 cards. I'm going to be using the Freeze a Bird stamp set, which just has these cute little bird images. Try to get that glare off of there. And what I've done is I've kind of copied a set of cards that I saw in the catalog on the page that this stamp set is shown. And the 3 cards, one would be for a beginner stamper, one would be for a more casual stamper, and one would be for a more avid or experienced stamper. All 3 are super simple. I'm going to walk you through how I do it. Per my norm, I have pre-cut, pre-die cut most of my elements just to save some time, because I want to show you more of putting the project together than actually taking the time to die cut and stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to move this out of the way. So each card is going to be kind of a stepped up version of the previous one. So I'm going to bring my card set in and show you the ones that I've made. So this first one here, this is going to be more for your beginner stamper, more simple stamper. But I just stamped some images on the cardstock, or on my card base. I stamped a portion of the bird stamp, that's this one, onto some white paper, and then I die cut it out. And then I stamped in a brown, I think I used soft suede for the sentiment hello, and then I just tied some linen thread and a bow around the card. So super simple. Here is the stepped up card. This would be more for your casual stamper, somebody who likes to add a little more detail. Maybe has been stamping a little bit longer, has a few more things. So with this one, very similar. Same thing, I stamped a portion of that bird onto some white cardstock and die cut it out. I still stamped my leaves on the cardstock background, but you can see that I added an extra layer of the cardstock just to give it a little more dimension, and I also tied my linen thread around that cardstock piece before gluing it down. And then I used my watercolor pencils to color in the bird and the branch. And then I added a few rhinestones, and my sentiment was kind of cut out of a separate piece of cardstock. The final card that I'm going to show you, this one's going to be more for your avid stampers, people that like to get really creative and busy with their cards. So this one, similar but not quite the same. So I've got my card base and I put part of it, I did a piece of, sorry, there's my cat. Let me get her out of the way here. I did a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of cardstock and I embossed it with the Scripty 3D embossing folder. I added a strip of designer series paper, and then I die cut out, same thing, stamped that portion of the bird and die cut that out, and then I also die cut one of the stitched nested labels. Sorry, my cat was in the way. One of the stitched nested labels to stamp those branches on instead of putting them right on the cardstock here. Still used my linen thread, still used some of those rhinestones, and then I also added a little portion of one of the vellum doilies under the designer series paper there. So I did it in a monochromatic style using crushed curry. I think my ink was crushed curry as well, and then my sentiment is stamped in soft suede. So today we're going to make the same set of cards, but we're going to do it in a different color. I'm going to use Seaside Spray instead. So let me move these out of the way. And while I'm bringing in my new supplies, I just want to remind you guys to like and share the video and my page. Leave me a little comment because that's going to help my page be seen by others. And I really appreciate it when you share. And I love to see your comments. I love to respond. So, but let's go ahead and get started. So as I've said, I pre-cut everything. So I've got my 3 card bases here. We're just going to start with one. So it's an 8 1/2 inch by 5 1/2 inch piece of cardstock, scored in the middle at 4 1/4. And we're just going to fold that in half. Bone folder here and give it a crease. So this is probably the easiest card to make. Now, I did stamp and die cut already my bird images, but if there's a little bit of time at the end, I'll show you guys exactly how I did that. So what we're going to start with is stamping the leaf image, and I'm going to bring in my Seaside Spray ink, and we're just going to lightly ink it up. And then placement doesn't matter. You can stamp wherever your heart desires. Now I could turn my stamp this way, but for me it's just easier to rotate my cardstock and then stamp it down. And then what we're going to do is bring in, I think I did pop up my last one on dimensionals, but you don't have to do that. You can leave them, you can leave it flat. And I'm going to bring in my Misty Moonlight and my sentiment. We're going to stamp the sentiment in Misty Moonlight. Right at the top here. I want to make sure this is nice and straight. Okay. These are the 2 that I'm going to be using. the most. So then I'm just gonna line this up kind of where I want it, and I think what I want to do is kind of get it so that it looks like it is coming off of that branch there. I think that looks good because you can still see the leaves and stuff. So I'm gonna flip that over and grab a couple dimensionals. And I just kind of stagger mine. Make sure I get the whole thing really popped up and even. Make sure I don't mix those up with my pieces that I need. Okay. So then I'm just going to line this up again, just to make it look like it's attached to that branch. I want to make sure it's straight before I press it down. That looks pretty good. Close these up for a second. And then what we're going to do is just bring in some linen thread, and you could use anything. Could use any color, any stamped image, any ribbon, any embossing folders, any embellishments. You know, this can be switched up to fit any theme or occasion. So what I'm gonna do here is just tie my bow. Snip my end here. Okay. And then all I have to do is just rotate this. To where I want it, and I loosened it up when I did that. Normally I would just rotate it up to where I wanted it and it would be fine, but I don't think I had my bow tight enough when I did that. So I'm going to retie. And then I'm gonna round out my bow there so it doesn't look quite so oblong. Slide it in just a little bit more. And there you have a super simple card. Move that a little bit. A super simple card. But even if you had to add in the die cutting, would not take you very long to make. So let's move on to the second one, which is going to be a little more involved. So same thing, I have a card base that measures 8.5 inches by 5.5 inches, scored in half at 4.25 inches. And actually that score line looks off. Just by a little bit, but that's okay. Bring in my... Alright, so I have another one of my stamped images that has already been die cut. I have a 4 1/4 by 3 inch piece of cardstock. And I'm going to bring in my little strip for my sentiment, which this measures approximately 5/16 of an inch by about 1 inch. It's a really tiny piece to cut. And I think what I'm going to do, I wasn't going to do this, but no, I'm going to stick with my original design. Okay, so I'm going to bring that Seaside Spray ink back in, and we're going to do the same thing on here that we did on the first card. We're going to ink up our leaves here, and we are going to stamp a few leaves. Also going to stamp my hello image off towards the right side there. Got it. Okay. So before I put anything on, I am going to flip this over. Throw some adhesive on here so that I can tie my bow at the bottom. Now doing it this way, I'm not going to be able to reposition once I've tied, so I'm going to need to make sure that I put my bow exactly where I want it. So we're just going to leave a little extra overhang on the side there. Oops, got a little bit on the grid paper there. I went a little crazy with the adhesive there, but with having the twine behind it, I just want to make sure that it sticks. So now for this, I put it kind of close to the top portion of the card. You could put it anywhere. You could put it towards the bottom. You could center it, whatever you wanted to do. But then I'm just going to make sure that's nice and straight. Press that down. Just come over here, tie my bow real quick. Fingers gave me a little bit of a fit there. All right. And then that bow came out a little bit crooked, but I don't mind that so much. Let me see if I can get this notch off so it's not messing with my thing. Okay, so now that I've got that on, I'm going to take my image here before I stick that down, and I'm going to show you guys just quickly how I watercolored the birds. I'm going to bring out my watercolor pencils. I used Old Olive, Calypso Coral, Bermuda Bay, and Daffodil Delight. And of course you could use your ink colors if you wanted. You could use whatever colors you might want. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of show you how I colored this in. So for my bird, I just put kind of a little bit of blue along the wing and at the top of the head. Did a little bit on the tail here, and then this time I'm going to do a little bit down on those lines on the belly. And then with my Daffodil Delight, I came in above the blue, down here towards the bottom, and along the side. I did my flowers in the Calypso Coral. I forgot my early espresso. I used early espresso for the branch here. And that I just colored the whole thing. And then for my leaves, I used my Old Olive. And I just kind of scribbled in. I am not a watercoloring guru by any means. And I'm still kind of learning how to perfect it, but I was satisfied with the way this one turned out. So what I'm going to do is bring in my Aqua Painter, and I'm going to get a little bit of water on the bristles there, and then I'm just going to start running that over the color here. And now because this is regular paper and not watercolor paper, you want to be careful to not oversaturate the paper, because it will cause the paper to kind of pill a little bit, and you don't really want... Ooh, that came out really bright yellow. You can kind of blend your blue into the yellow if you want a little bit of a green. We are going to do the same thing on the other one as well, but I was saying about the paper pilling, if you use too much water, it'll ruin the image. You can put rubbing alcohol in your Aqua Painter and use it that way. I currently don't have any because I still can't find any at the stores near me. So water it is. I'm just gonna color in Calypso Coral. And then sometimes if I'm not satisfied completely with the way my color turned out, I'll come in and just add a little bit of color over the wet paper and help it blend in a little bit. And anybody that is that knows how to watercolor probably could do this a little bit better. If you have pointers for me, I'd love to hear them. Anything to make my stamping life easier. So now what I'm going to do, kind of, should be pretty good. I'm just going to take my yellow and just color in the beak nice and dark. And then I'm going to bring in my blue and color over the eye of the bird there. Now I'm going to take my little sentiment and I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on it. Get it on the right spot. then I'm just going to attach this right about here, kind of hanging off the side. A few more dimensionals. All right, so we're just going to come up here. Same thing, I want to kind of line this up with the branch. Make sure it's straight. And that one ended up a little bit higher than my last one, but that's okay. And then the finishing touches, we're just going to put a few rhinestones on the card here. These I'm just, every time I open the package, they fall off. All right, so we're just going to place a few rhinestones on the card here. And again, this placement does not matter. You can put them wherever you'd like. You don't even have to put them on at all. You can use whatever you'd like. I'm going to do one in the corner. One right here, and then we're gonna do one right here, kind of tucked up underneath. So there you have it, another card, just as beautiful as the first, but with a few added touches, just to give it a little more pizzazz. So we are going to come in with that last card now. And this one was just as simple to make. It did not require much extra time except for the extra embossing that I did on the layer. So I've got my little 5/16 of an inch by 1 inch strip of white for my sentiment. And again, this is approximate. I've got my die cut piece of white. I've got my stitched nested label. I have my pre-embossed cardstock layer there, which part of my letters went flat. I've got my 4 1/4 by 3 inch piece of patterned paper, a little piece of doily because we're going to put that under, and then we're going to bring in our card base, which just like the last, 8.5 inches by 5.5 inches, scored in half at 4 1/4. So we're just going to fold that and crease it with the bone folder there. It's nice and flat. We are going to I'm going to do some adhering first. So we're going to start with this embossed piece. It's the same size as the card front, so it's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So it's going to cover the whole front of the card. Now, you could, if you wanted, just instead of doing a separate piece, emboss just the front of your card base. I've been having some trouble with my die cutting machine. My plates aren't wanting to go through with my embossing folders. So I didn't want to try to do it with my card front and ruin my card. I think that went a little bit crooked, but it's okay. So there you can see I put my embossed piece on the front. going to take, I don't need this whole piece of doily, so I'm just going to kind of snip kind of along the edge there, so I just have a portion of it because I can use that other piece for another project later on down the road. And what I'm going to do is take this patterned paper and I'm going to put my adhesive on it, all over it. I went a little adhesive crazy there too. So I think I want that to the side, and I'm just going to pick up the vellum doily with that adhesive where I want it, press it down. I'm going to do a little more adhesive over the top, and I'm going to line this up where I want it. And again, I'm kind of going closer to the top, so you're still going to see the embossed letters. My measurements must have been off just ever so slightly because this patterned paper is not, there we go, fairly centered there. Okay, so now we're going to set this aside. We're going to do our stamping and our watercoloring. I don't think I'm going to have to die cut another thing real quick. This one wasn't big enough. You know what? I'm just going to work with it. We'll make it. We'll make it work. I die cut the label that was too small, so we're going to just have to work with what we've got. So I'm bringing those ink colors back in. We're going to do the same thing with this little label. I want to make sure that I get my edge here where I want it. I'm only doing that so I know where to stamp my leaves. Moving that card out of the way. We're going to stamp our leaves and our sentiment just like we've done the last two cards. So my leaves first. I'm going to come in like this, and they are going to overhang slightly. So you can see where it cut off a little bit. And then I'm going to come in here like this, and I'm going to stamp. And then I'm going to stamp that second set right like that. The whole leaf would have fit if I had die cut the correct size. We're going to take our sentiment, and again, I'm just using hello, but you can use anything you want. And I'm going to come in as close to the left edge as I can get. Make sure I stamp this straight. Nice thing about cardstock, I can flip it over and try again. One more time, we're going to come in as close to the right edge of the strip as I can get. And I want to make sure I get the whole thing. There we go. Not quite to the left, but it's close enough. And so then the last thing I'm going to do is just watercolor in this bird like I did before. So I'm going to use my Bermuda Bay pencil, and I'm going to come in at the tail, on the wing, and up around the eye at the head. I'm gonna bring in my Daffodil Delight, and I'm gonna come in at this little piece at the neck. I am gonna color in my beak now, and I'm gonna kind of come down along the edge and up around the belly, the bottom. I'm going to use my Calypso Coral to color in my flowers. Get all these flowers shaded in here. Okay, got my old olive for my leaves. And one tip to getting these all blended nicely is to make sure that you've got a nice drop of water on your Aqua Painter. The wetter it is, the nicer the colors blend together. And I usually just drip a couple drops on my brush onto my Stampin' Scrub. But again, you want to be careful to not get too much water on your regular cardstock if you're not using watercolor paper. I'm gonna kind of paint over this Bermuda Bay here, blend it into the yellow. Come down at the head here, blend it down into the yellow. Do my old olive on my leaves. And using the different color ink to stamp in has kind of given it a little bit of a different look because the ink has spread a little bit too. Okay, and I'm just gonna, I don't think I did this on my last one, but I'm just gonna run over my branch as well. So there you can see my pretty little watercolored bird. I used too much yellow that time. And on the last one compared to my first set of cards, but it's all right. All right, so I'm going to take my linen thread and I'm going to tie it around my little piece here with my bird on it. And I'm going to go just above the bird's head here. This is another one that would be kind of difficult to move once I get it where I want it because of the notches in the cardstock. But I had no trouble tying those bows on that other set of cards. And today my fingers don't want to work, most likely because I am recording this live. Next time I may have to pre-tie my bows too, because I feel like this took longer than if I had die cut everything for you guys while we were live. I'm going to make this bow a little bit smaller just because it's on a smaller piece here. And I'm just going to come in and snip. And again, bow came out a little bit crooked, but it doesn't look terrible. Okay, so we're going to bring in our card base. And this one I am just going to glue down. Down kind of towards the bottom. I'm going to put the edge that I marked. On the left edge of the card because I am going to snip that off. I'm going to bring in my piece here with a few dimensionals. We're going to put this right about here. I'm not able to line this up like I did with the others because my label was too small, but that's okay. And then I'm going to take my little sentiment here. We're going to put the adhesive towards the left side on the back. I hate when I get and then we're going to stick that so that it is hanging off the edge. I don't want it covered by, I think I'm going to put it down here this time, since my bow's kind of up there. Okay, and we're just going to finish it off with a few quick rhinestones. So we're going to put a medium-sized one, I think right about here. I'm going to put a medium-sized one right about here. And then I'm going to put a large one. I can get it picked up here with my, we're going to put it right here, kind of tucked under that bird. Alright guys, so there you have it. A little more of an advanced card, stepped up from, definitely stepped up from the first one, but stepped up a little bit from the last one. I think I kind of like it in the blue, just as much as the yellow actually. So let's do a side-by-side of these. So here are our first ones, which are just super simple, super easy, didn't take hardly any time at all. Here is our second one with just a little more detail. Used all the same supplies. And then here was that third one that used a couple extra things, but mostly all the same. You can see the cards are slightly different only because I didn't have the larger label, and my bow and my sentiment are opposite of where they were. So anyways, I would love to know what you thought about the cards. I'd love to know what you thought about the card class today. As I said in the beginning, leave me a comment, leave me a like, share this so that others can see it. I really, really would appreciate it. Trying to get my page out there for others to see. And if you leave a comment at some point today or tomorrow, I'm going to do a drawing tomorrow evening for somebody to win a set of these cards. I will mail them to you. So share away, comment away, let me know what you think, and join me again next week on Wednesday when we do another online card class. And until then, happy stamping. Bye.